Hey, what's up? It's Matt for 360 Investigations, and welcome to episode 3 of A Journey in the Making. I'm going to kind of go in a little bit of a different direction with this video because I need to clear up some questions that people keep asking me, or basically putting comments underneath videos that I am leaving replies for, as far as the way hiking is done. So in this video, I'm going to try to keep this as short as I can, but it's addressing why I have a problem and why many other people have a problem with what is going on with the Appalachian Trail. So to help you understand this, I'm going to be using my magic career and the know-how as the example for this, and then I will connect it to the hiking because it's one of the only real ways I can get the point across. So first, I want to explain that everything I'm talking about in this video is not an opinion. It's coming from thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of other hikers who are getting aggravated with the situation I'll be talking about. It is a legitimate issue, and it will make sense on why. So first things first, I want to get a phrase out of the way, which is hike your own hike. Let me clarify what that statement is. That statement is a nasty statement, and what it basically says is mind your fucking business. That's what the phrase actually means. People are saying hike your own hike as in, well, if they're going to do theirs, why don't you just do yours? No, it's basically saying, who the hell are you to tell them what to do? So I just want to clarify that that statement is not nice because I get people saying this to me. And so that being said, I'm going to start off by going into a straight up apology first, because everything I'm talking about, if I am wrong, and I wind up going against some of the things I'm saying, I will come back and apologize. As embarrassing as it is, I get no problems doing that. But until then, this is my standpoint on this, as well as thousands of other people. So that being said, let me get into this. Starting with me being a magician. All right. When somebody who's not a magician buys a trick, they're buying the instructions on how the trick is done. Now, if they take that trick, read the instructions, and then go on social media and do the trick, and then claim they're doing magic, that is a false statement. I am a professional magician. Now, the comparison I'm making here is I have a YouTube channel. I do shows. People are familiar with what I do, or people that have seen me or know who I am know what I do. I have a way to separate myself from the people who are saying they're magicians from the people who are actually magicians. And this is a problem inside the magic community because the concept's literally the same. So what do I mean by this? All right. If you go watch the way a magician does something compared to somebody who buys a trick and then claims to be a magician, they're worlds apart. Now, I can go on social media. I have my stuff. You can see what I do. You can see it. So it doesn't bother me whether somebody goes on and claims to be a magician, because it'll come out naturally through them being fake, because there's a lot of real magicians and a lot of people that are just social media magicians using camera tricks, things like that. Now, that doesn't really bother the magic community, because in the end, if you get me in front of them, if you get me and them, if you get me put together with somebody who's fake, it'll come out in the end and they'll just make themselves look bad. I have a way to not be categorized with this, which doesn't really bother me. So how does that apply to hiking? So let me begin and back up by explaining the Appalachian Trail's hiking in the 1970s, 80s, and even, the 70s, 80s, 90s, and partly into the 2000s, had a very specific way to do this. It was challenging. And people that didn't have the understanding to do it couldn't make it through the trail, because the safety nets that are out now really didn't exist back then. And as far as people trying to argue points that they don't know what they're talking about on, let me explain by hostels. I've said this in other videos. However, a hostel was never originally meant for hikers to use as a safety net to get off of the trail and stay indoors. They were not. People who think that need to go back and look at the history of what hostels really were. Hostels were for forest rangers and government personnel to have a place to stay. It's kind of like a fire lookout. It was officially for the enforcement of people who are protecting the wildlife and forest rangers. It was not for hikers to use as a getaway from the trail to cheese their way through it. Okay, so let's get that out of the way. Now, what happens here is that when I announce that I'm doing an AT through hike, okay, the image that's being passed on to me is the image that people have taken and removed all of the challenges from, who are now making announcement videos, gear videos, and then when they actually get out on the trail, they spend more than half of their time inside hostels and hotels, and they've turned it into a dog and pony show, and it's a tourist attraction. They've turned it into a game that they're allowed to go through due to all these safety nets. Now, to be clear, there is nothing wrong with going to a hostel. There's nothing wrong with going in town. You want to stay in a hotel? Great. That is up to you. That's not a problem, and there's nothing wrong with it. The reason why I brought that up is people keep saying, because of what I'm talking about, what's the problem? Hike your own hike, blah, blah. None of that matters. I don't care how people go through the trail. What is a problem is the way people are now doing the trail, because 99% of them that do this have given the trail the image now of anybody going through it constantly going inside and doing day hikes as a dog and pony show in a tourist attraction. That image is being passed on to me, and it's annoying the shit out of me and thousands of other actual hikers. So let me clarify something again that I don't know if I said it, but if I didn't, I'm going to say it now. And if I did, I apologize for repeating it. That the Appalachian Trail in this 1970s, 80s, 90s, and somewhat into the 2000s is a survival challenge. People say, oh, it's not survivability. Yes, it is. It's a camping, hiking, survival challenge that you needed to endure the elements of the trail in order to be considered actually hiking. Because the way it was done back then, there is no excuse for anybody to not be doing it the same way now as it was back then. Except people have removed all of the challenges from this and then make these videos about, oh, I'm going through the trail, giving it a false image. Which that image now, because so many people are doing it, is being projected onto other people. I don't want to be categorized as being indoors. When I say I'm going to go do the trail, I am actually enduring the elements. I am enduring the hardships. I am sleeping in my tent. The whole point of the AT is simply to go into wilderness, not to continue trying to be civilized on the trail while being on the trail. That's absurd, and that's not how the trail is. And people are like, who made you the arbiter of this? I didn't make myself the arbiter of anything. 1970s, 80s, 90s, and partly into 2000s dictates how the trail was done. When you did it back then, you actually accomplished something. I mean, hell, the 100-mile wilderness used to be a serious problem because that was one of the most dangerous parts on the entire trail. Not just because there was no resupply points, but because if you were stuck in there, you were stuck in there. There was a reason why those signs say, hey, don't go through this unless you have at least 10 days supply of food and water. What's happened now is the hostels have somehow managed to get 3 resupply points in the woods, which renders the challenge of the woods pointless. You've removed the challenge by allowing this crap to go on. In the 100-mile wilderness, sure, it's the same stretch of woods, but the way it's done doesn't really matter anymore because any idiot with enough money can go do this. I'm sorry to say that this is the way it is. So when people are making these announcement videos, when you watch them all over YouTube, they do these gear videos. I'm going through the trail. And then when you actually watch their vlogging, they're indoors for more than half the time. And the people that I'm going to bring up here, sorry, I had to go look up the name of this channel. But two of the biggest perpetrators of this are Captain Jack and Bob Ross. They're past the 40-day mark. And their videos like Appalachian Trail Therapy, or whatever it is. They've barely spent any time doing any hiking. Almost every single video they put up is them slack packing, which is basically having your gear carried. They're not carrying their gear. They're constantly sleeping inside, and they're calling it AT therapy or something like that. They aren't even doing the trail. I'm sorry to tell people this, and I'm really honestly, again, thousands of people are tired of people defending crap like this. They are not hiking the trail, because hiking the trail entails you doing it the way it was done in the 1970s, 80s, 90s, and partly into the 2000s. You can disagree with that all you want, and that's not me being arbiter. That's me taking the way the trail was done back then and applying it now, which is what it should be. Nowadays, anybody can just go do anything because there's so many safety nets, and with enough money, you can just cheese your way through it. Sorry to tell you this, that's not hiking the AT. The AT requires you, and it has the context attached to it, that you are doing survivability, enduring the trail, and you are staying out of civilization as much as possible, not going into it and turning it into a tourist attraction. And that being said, I want to get one final thing out of the way. I am not saying don't use hostels. I'm not saying don't use hotels. I'm not saying don't go into town. I'm not saying don't eat there. I am eventually going to have to do that because I'm going to need resupply, things like that. So I don't want to sound like a hypocrite. But what I am saying is when you plan to do the trail and you make these huge announcements and make it like this big project, and you are not doing it the way it was in the 1970s, 80s, 90s, and partly into 2000s, then you are not hiking the trail and you don't deserve credit for doing it in the fashion it was originally supposed to be done in. Again, people are trying to remove the challenge of it and say, well, just get with the times. Sorry, the AT is the AT, and there's absolutely no reason at all that anybody is not doing it the way it was in the 1970s, 80s, 70s, 80s, 90s, and partly into 2000. It is literally that simple. So, that being said, that's why I have an issue with it. I do have every right to say something because I don't want to be categorized with this. And once again, if I get out on the trail and I wind up having the exact opposite, I will have no problems coming on and apologizing for this. As embarrassing as that may be, I can admit I made a mistake. But until then, until I go out, I'm tired of this, and people are tired of this because I don't have to go on the AT and I don't have to have done the hike yet to understand how wilderness survival is because I used to do it, and I used to do it in extremely harsh conditions in some of the toughest places in the United States, which is in the White Mountains, in Maine, and parts of Vermont. That's just how it is. So I can speak for this because, again, people are like, oh, you're not on the trail. I've done enough in my life to know this. So that's basically it. That being said, I shouldn't bring any of this up anymore. I'm going to continue doing with actual educational stuff, things like that. So keep an eye on the next couple of videos that I'll be doing as far as how I did the research for this, YouTubers I watched, some of the problems with YouTubers, things like that. And especially one of the most requested ones that I'm getting is the food video. And that's it. So I don't want to drag this out, but I do, people are owed an explanation, but hopefully this helps you understand exactly what the issue I have is. So again, to be clear, there's nothing wrong with going to hostels. There's nothing wrong with going to hotels. There's nothing wrong with going into town or anything else. People can do that whatever they want. But do not tell me to go fucking mind my business when I point out that people are making these videos that are reflecting back on me and putting me into that same category as them when I'm trying to separate myself from that. And I won't have a defense against this the way I can with my magic until I actually go on the trail. And again, that may change. So until then, keep an eye out for episode 4, which is I'm going to put up some of the problems that YouTubers have, the problem that YouTube basically gives up an image on. And that's not trying to be negative. That's just what happens. I'll explain in the video. But again, that's going to be the next video, episode 4. And then in episode 5, I'll be talking about how I did my research and things like that. And then in episode 6, I'll be putting the food video up. That's it. Till then, Matt for 360 Investigations signing out. Have a good one. Stay safe.